Hello, this is Kellison, and I'm doing a shoutcast of one of my own replays. I'm starting as in the 12 o'clock position as the blue Protoss, while my opponent is starting in the roughly 7 o'clock position as the red Protoss. It was a kind of a friendly match. It's my 4th game in the 1v1 ranking, and supposedly we're both around platinum level. I don't know how accurate it is because I don't feel that great, but it turned out to be a pretty good match all in all. So at this point in time, we can see in the resource tab that I'm actually behind. I kind of had a very crappy start, more or less, but I do have quite a bit more resources than him at the moment, and that's probably a good thing. In production, we see that he's building a probe and a pylon, and we're building pylons around the same time. His pylon placement was for his ramp, so he can't use his ramp as a natural choke. However, that does mean he will be able to expand a little easier than I do. We're scouting both at the same time. My probe's a little ahead of his, and both continuing to produce probes. If we look at the income tab, he's got more harvesters than I do by a little bit, and every harvester counts in the long haul. But the resource income is pretty much equal at this point in time. Right now we're both building gateway and more probes. He's scouting around my base like an annoying little probe that he can be, and I'm placing a second gateway. So I'm starting with a 2 gate and he's going with a 1 gate. I'm using the second gate as to sort of reinforce my natural wall and enforce the choke point right there. You can see a little after me, he's starting to build his second gateway. And the probe's still in my base, and I'm not really scouting his as I probably should be. But I've got more important things to focus on at this point in time, in my opinion. If we go back to income, he's got more harvesters than I do right now. This is something that I need to work on, which is accumulating harvesters early game, because I can fall behind pretty quick on that. However, in production we can see sort of where we're starting to differentiate. I built a zealot earlier and got gas earlier. I find getting gas early is rather important because Protoss is a very gas heavy race. My zealot's not where it should be, which is should be in the corner blocking the ramp, but that's because I'm an idiot. Right now it's actually a fairly boring part of the game. We're sort of both setting up. I set up a pylon in the corner of my base so I can sort of pay attention if anything's trying to go around here, like blink stalkers or in a warp prism, because it's very common to put warp prism and phasing units all around the enemy base. And if you have no knowledge of that, you can find yourself in a world of hurt pretty quickly. I'm getting a cybernetics core a little before him and getting my second gas up. So I'm trying to lean towards a more productive gas-heavy build, but I'm building zealots while waiting for stuff to naturally accumulate up. So, once again, I am now sort of scouting his base with a probe, sort of seeing what's up with him, because I haven't scouted nearly as much as he has. I see he's gone with a double gate towards his entrance, and he has less zealots than I do at this time, but he starts researching warp gate and gets a sentry and a stalker for me, so this is his unit composition is a little better. But I pump out a couple extra zealots and start to attack, hoping that I can do some early damage since I know he's not as ahead as me. And here's where sort of the battle starts taking place. He's going for a 3rd gateway, so he's probably aiming for some pseudo 4th gate build, or maybe a 3 gate robo bay. Not exactly sure, but at this point in time, the battle's already started to commence. His force field placement wasn't that good, so, but I started to attack his base, and I did manage to destroy 1 gate, which sets him behind 150 minerals, I think. If we look at unit loss, at this point in time, he's lost a lot more than I have. He's lost 7 units and 800 resources equivalent, and I've only lost 200. Since I'm not able to destroy that warp gateway, it's not warp gate yet, I sort of flee, which is probably the right thing to do, I think. I had more units coming, so I wanted to reinforce my army prior. Since I don't... Since I am only researching Warpgate right now, I can't 7 up my... I paused it. Crap. My bad. I paused it, I'm sorry. At this point in time, I sort of have started setting up an expansion, as well as researching Warp Gate, which just finished, I believe. When he falls back to his gate, because he's not naturally walling off his entrance, I have a sort of a chance to sort of harass this front entrance, where he doesn't have that opportunity of mine since I force a warp. I forced him to choke. Sentry, I wasn't sure what that force field was for. I would have kept the energy for Guardian Shield, but not to each his own. He's now building a 3rd gateway and a forge up here. So he was definitely trying to aim for some type of 4-gate or 3-gate build. Not exactly sure what it is. Right now I have an expansion being built. I should be scouting with that probe because he's not going to be doing anything there. I want to know if he's going to attack base so I can cancel the Nexus. But since it's not really at my natural, he doesn't really know it's there since he hasn't been scouting as much. He's definitely produced... I'm sort of trying to catch up right now, researching Warp Gate finally. Pumping out an extra Zealot, a couple extra gateways as I'm intending for a 4-gate build. And I'm chrono boosting my cybernetics core, which is producing warp gates right now. And I was a little late on that, so it was kind of my bad on that. And now he's finally starting to sort of attack my base. I sort of retreat up here because I can defend this natural choke a lot easier since I've got a few heavy Zealots. And his actual... he does manage to catch a Zealot, but right now I'm still ahead technically in units lost. He's lost a little more, about double the resources I have at this point in the game. So, and if we go to view his viewpoint only, he does not know I've gone 4-gate at this point, nor does he know I have an expansion over here. So this probe right here is not really giving much info. But it is getting him line of sight, so he could see if I went around. Pylon up here so I can warp in units if necessary, as well as trying to get some more drones up here. Income is still higher than his, though his is actually quickly catching up to mine, and that's probably not a good thing. But right now I'm also going for a 3rd gate, for a 3rd Nexus, which allows me to sort of improve my economy even more over his, as well as the fact that this is already starting to becoming very depleted, as you start with 1500 and several of them are already into the 400 range, so I need a place to move quickly. I've actually gotten a robotics bay, which means, and getting 6-gate, so I can warp in 6 units at a time, as well as bringing out the Mighty Immortal. If we look at his units and my units, I've got the same number of probes right now, and he's got Zealots, Stalker, and Sentry. I've got 2 Immortals. Immortals have a huge damage versus armor, and if we look at a Stalker, Protoss armor makes him actually fairly weak against the Immortal. The Immortal also deals whopping 20 damage. So the Immortal is actually a very good counter to a Stalker. And right now, I have a bigger army than him, but he's got those Sentries, and Force Field placement and Guardian Shield can definitely turn the tide of any battle very quickly. If we look at the units in production at this time, he's got a Dark Shrine coming up at this point in the game, which I'm not familiar with. I typically don't recommend going Dark Shrine against Protoss, simply because photon cannons are a very powerful defense. Right here, I've sort of just warped in quite a bit of units. I've got 1 Sentry, 3 Immortals, and a Zealot, and we sort of clash in here. And if we sort of watch my Stalker army Immortals sort of go at it, I'm doing some significant damage to him. He tries to sort of slow my approach, but I would have recommended using a choke and being a little safer, but he sort of boxes my units and retreats, which I think was a bad move since I can't actually attack. I can just start attacking his structures, and at which point I took out both his warp gates, so he only has about 4 gates instead of 6 pumping out units at this point in time, which means my already larger army is going to have some huge damage. He actually pulls out 4 Dark Templar right now, which is really bad for me since I have no observers. And as soon as I see my units start falling, I'm going, oh crap, I need to sort of do as much damage as possible. So I go straight for the Nexus, taking out his natural expansion, which stalls his economy income greatly, since we can sort of see that I've sort of already pulled ahead again in the economy factor. And then I start going for his warp gates. So now that I've taken out his ability to reproduce and most of his army, I can go for... He sends his probes at me thinking it's sort of a last-ditch attempt. And, well, since I don't have any observers out right now, I sort of take a full army loss. And if I had several observers, I would have done much, much better. So looking at production again, he's warping in pylons because I sort of supply locked him right there, which was a really bad thing for him. And then I sort of warped in more units and got an observer, as I could easily get observers. At this point in time, I'm sort of like, well, I need to get some photon cannons up on my ridge because I know he's going to try to enter my base. When my stalker's attacking, he sort of attacks my warp gate and picks up the pylon here, and I didn't get the photon cannons I needed to get up here, so I quickly sort of say, get out of there, bro, get out of there. And I try to warp in some units in my base to try to stall him. I know I can't fully take him out. Right now, he's actually putting photon cannons up on his ridge if we look at production, and warping some more, and trying to get a little more probes, which I think was a bad move at that point. I would have said, save the extra 50 and try to get your nexus up again. I got my observer here, and then, as you can see, the Dark Templar sort of quickly falls to the Stalkers, which was why I don't recommend going Dark Templar. So he did actually a fair amount of damage, and if he kept on attacking that, he could have sacrificed it too and then took out the Nexus, but he retreated, which was a bad move, I think, especially since this allowed the expansion to sort of recover. And since this mineral is already almost mined out, I'm just going to transfer him there when this is over with that. So looking at the units lost tab, at this point in time, I've lost a lot less units, and he's lost a lot more in resource value. And I'm attacking once again with my stalkers. I'm not aware that he's got photon cannons up here right now, except for when they attack me. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to reach his photon cannons without any immortals. I don't want to lose my observer because those Dark Templars will tear me to shreds. I've got an observer watching his natural, so I can sort of tell when he's trying to expand again. So at this point in time, I'm sort of just trying to do as much damage as possible. I know I can't sort of carelessly walk up into his front base because obviously that would be a death trap. I'm warping the pylon close to his base so I can cross and warp in units much faster since I already have my 6 gates up. And Stalkers versus Stalkers, I think, you know, as long as I can take care of those Dark Templar, I'll do pretty good. Not exactly. I decided to move my observer away, which I'm not exactly entirely sure, but I wanted to make sure he didn't have an economic advantage over me. So I need to scout these. You can't do pings and minimap and replays. Shame. But I wanted to ping the minimap and show sort of where the resource locations are. In Metalopolis, this is actually for, you can play with 4 players, so there's actually a couple bases here, as well as the 2 high yield minerals. I wanted to make sure he didn't have a high yield mineral shot. At this point in time, I don't want to be careless and lose way too much. A little bad play by me. He sort of quickly comes overhead, and he has more stalkers than I do. I'm going to be taking quite a few losses here. However, if you look at my units, his units, they both have no upgrades. So I'm starting to warp some units, and I didn't get any time to cast the sentry yet. Really big deal, since it means they can take less damage as well as be up on cliffs and attack things that are not as close. And so we're entering an engagement again. He's got a fairly stalker heavy army, as well as a couple sentries and a Dark Templar, so I don't want to be, you know, careless, because that would probably be the end of me. So I retreated back to my base, and he sort of retreats back to his place. We're both sort of very cautious players. And I'm sort of going to try to press forward again. Knowing that I have an observer this time, I can actually take out the Dark Templar should this one come up. So he sort of managed to do a decent move where he sort of blocked off the ramp and made me sort of slow down. So that's not exactly a good thing. Looking at units lost, I've actually sort of brought people to him. And as he retreats, I thought that was a bad move because the photon cannon would have helped him in his defense. And he didn't really have sufficient quantity to take me out. So I'm going after the pylon because I don't want that photon cannon killing my observer, especially if he warps into Dark Templar. So at this point in time, I can't really get close to his base because he's got those ridges, which is the high ground, which my units can't